You're wounded. I can fix that.
Where were you? I was worried sick.
There is speculation that the disappearance is connected to the unsolved murders of 3 other girls over the past 4 years.
Sweetheart, you can't just change the rules because someone's shown an interest. You don't know me.
I know that people make mistakes.
I always wanted to shoot a film set on Jersey, and it's loosely inspired by a true case. There was a guy called the Beast of Jersey who committed a lot of horrific crimes in the 60s. And even when I grew up in the 80s, he was still a kind of spectre that haunted the island. And it made quite a big impact on my childhood imagination. And so I wanted to look at that story or write an original story sort of based from that. And it was an opportunity to go back to the island and explore my own feelings and impressions, use that landscape as a kind of mythical backdrop to a crime story.
Jersey is like intrinsic to the whole telling of the story. It is such a powerful character in this film. And before we shot, me, Johnny and Michael went to Jersey and we spent a week there, like just getting a sense of the place. And thank God, because it feeds every decision that you're going to make when you're outside it. But it's a very, you know, it's a place of, it's an outcast, you know, it's kind of lonely, the place.
What are you doing, you freak? What? Do you know how to use that?
When I first read Moll and read the story, I had a real guttural reaction to her and to the story and felt connected to her. I felt there was just so much possibility and there was something that I knew couldn't be quite realised until I actually got into the performance of it. And so for the prep, it was just about dripping in as much of her world into my head and still keeping it open enough for me. She's so raw and her skin is like shaved down to quite a thin, vibrating place. She's a thrilling character.
You got...
Such a big impact when we cast Jessie Buckley because she's Moll. If Moll grew up under different circumstances, like Jessie's so grounded and spirited and natural as a person and so unguarded. And I thought maybe that's a really interesting collision to get someone like that and put her in the straitjacket of this character. And also just Jessie, she contributed so much to how the character would manifest. She's constantly looking for new ways when we're shooting on the day to like uncover another layer. So it felt like Moll was never a fixed idea. You know, she was a living, breathing character that was constantly evolving through the making of the film.
He's got such a strong vision, Michael, as well. And was so keen to collaborate, and that's when storytelling, I think, really evolves, is when both people come together with separate visions and meet in the middle, and from that, a new way of storytelling or a new story can come out for both of you.
I knew it was going to be this dark fairy tale. I knew it was some way was going to be a psychological thriller. Once I developed the characters and they started to have a life of their own, that's when it started to go in, directions that I couldn't predict. And it's the characters that begin to like dictate the story. So some of it's by design, some of it's just coming up, bubbling away from your subconscious.
You're safe. I was worried sick. What happened? Come here. I won't bite.
I love that it's a female-driven story about a foibled person and about the complexities of life and the challenges of actually just trying to exist and be honest with yourself, even if it's qualities that you hate about yourself or are scared about yourself. And I suppose with Moll, what I loved most about her is that she engages with those qualities that she is scared of, and she grows because of that I hope it creates more stories like that for female characters and for men. Like, I think Johnny's character is just as complex as, you know, he's not the archetypal hero. He's got a sensitivity to him. Just because he's a dangerous man, he's not unsensitive. You know, you see Johnny so beautifully, like, sprinkles in humanity into this person who can be incredibly inhuman.
Come on. I got you.
In some ways, it's paradoxically, she needs a monster to help her break free of the family. There's another interpretation where it's her subconscious that has kind of found him and created him, and she's using him. You know, I think the two characters are drawn towards each other because they're both outsiders and they both feel kind of maligned by this community. And we, by virtue of that, identify with them because we all feel like outsiders to some degree. So we're really behind their love story, even as we question them. And I thought that was, it was an interesting place to put the audience, where you get them to question the characters who they care about most. And I never wanted the audience to settle on whether they were watching the protagonists or whether they were the antagonists of the movie. It's a certain amount of jeopardy that you have when you don't know how much you should be investing in a character. And I find it difficult to think in terms of like heroes and villains. I'm not even sure whether they exist, or if they do exist, whether they make interesting film characters. If you can't empathize with your characters, or at least a side of them, then you're not looking hard enough. And equally, if you haven't found the flaws of your characters, you haven't looked deep enough. So in some ways, Mole and Pascal are two sides of the same coin.
I think they have a need for each other. They're both outcasts trying to, in a way, stage a rebellion against morality in their world. And I think when she meets him, I think she's looking for a way out of the prison of her life that she's living in, and he kind of lances that blister in her through love. And maybe she would have done it without him. I think she did need him, though, and I think he needed her too. In a way, I do think their love was real, and they were experiencing that in a kind of world where also all eyes were on them.
How long have you known Pascal Renouf?
A couple of weeks.
And what's the nature of your relationship?
We're lovers.
This isn't easy, but I need to ask about your love life. Look, Mole, I'm the last person in the world that wants to ask this, but we're dealing with an extremely dangerous individual.
He's a bit of a shapeshifter, the character of Pascal, because we fall in love with him and we're also frightened by him. And I kind of want the audience to be behind the relationship, even when Pascal has this big question mark hanging over him. So we did takes where Pascal was innocent, and we did takes where Pascal was guilty. And I think, the final performance is probably an amalgamation of those two different approaches. And I think that so much of that's down to Johnny, because he's got it's a very enigmatic presence. Sometimes he seems quite vulnerable, and other times extremely sinister. I think it's uncanny.
Hey.
Hey. I thought I lost you.
When you make your first film, you only have a certain amount of resources, but your expectations are here, and that discrepancy is always quite painful. But it's what keeps you fighting to make the most interesting version of that film.
I know Michael has been really kind of strong in holding on to the notion of ambiguity in telling a story. It's not fed to you. It's something that you're involved in, and you have an emotional reality that's unique to you with this film, which is brilliant. You want everybody to come away and have a relationship with a story.